This happened a few months ago. I was 32 and had been on the road all week for work. I just wanted to get home, so I chose this dark, narrow highway to avoid the heavy traffic on the main roads. I was tired, and my GPS led me down this desolate-looking route. I still remember how quiet it was, how the flickering street lamps barely lit the tall trees lining the road. I've never stopped thinking about it. At first, everything was normal. I was listening to music, trying to stay awake. Suddenly, I saw a car pulled over on the side of the road with its hood up. I slowed down, thinking about stopping to help. But there was someone standing in the shadows, just watching me. I felt a chill run down my spine. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. I kept driving. The road ahead felt even darker. After a while, I caught sight of a woman standing by an old, abandoned diner. It looked like nobody had been there for years. She just stood there, staring into space, and I felt this unsettling sensation wash over me. Part of me wanted to stop, but the other part screamed to keep going. My heart raced. I drove past, glancing in my rearview mirror. She was still there. Then it got weirder. I remember an empty stretch of road where I could hear laughter echoing around me. Laughter. I didn't see anyone, and it felt wrong, so out of place in the stillness of the night. I felt cold, like I was being watched again. I barely breathed, hoping it would fade away. But it didn't. As I continued, I saw someone by the roadside, a hitchhiker. He raised his thumb for a ride. I slowed down, but as I got closer, he vanished right before my eyes. One moment he was there, the next he was gone, like he never existed. My hands tightened on the wheel. I couldn't explain it. I felt panic creeping in. Finally, I reached home around 3 a.m. I turned off the car and sat there for a moment, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I wanted to think it was all just my tired mind playing tricks on me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play on that highway. I kept asking myself who those figures were. I wasn't sure if they were real. How could a simple drive home turn into something so bizarre? My heart was racing just thinking about it. I still drive that route sometimes. I don't know why I do, but I was left troubled, searching for answers that maybe don't even exist. Then I remembered something chilling. The laughter still echoed in my mind. As I turned the key to my house, I wondered if I'd ever escape the darkness. The next day, I tried to shake off the memories. I had work to do, but the strange events from the night before haunted me. I found myself checking online for strange occurrences on that highway. Perhaps someone else had gone through something similar. I clicked through forums, but nothing stood out. It left me feeling more isolated. At lunch, I shared a joke about my ghostly hitchhiker with a coworker. They laughed, but I could see the discomfort in their eyes. I felt foolish for bringing it up. It wasn't just a joke to me. That night, I took a different route home. It was longer, but I needed a break from the memories. But as fate would have it, I heard whispers of laughter. The same unsettling sound I had heard before. Panic surged in my chest, and I glanced around, but there was nothing. I flipped the radio on and cranked the volume. I needed to drown it out. Weeks passed. I avoided the dark highway, but my mind would often drift back to it. Then, on a rainy Saturday evening, curiosity got the best of me. I decided to drive through again. Maybe I could confront my fears. I drove cautiously, hyper-aware of every shadow and rustle. As I approached the old diner, my heart sank. The woman was there again, still staring into nothingness, her expression eerily blank. I knew I shouldn't stop, but something compelled me. I pulled over, heart thumping, and rolled down my window. "Are you all right?" I called out, feeling foolish. She didn't respond but turned her head slowly, locking eyes with me. I felt the chill grip me. In her gaze, I saw something, an emptiness that sent shivers down my spine. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. That's when I noticed a man stepping out from the shadows behind her. He walked slowly, deliberately, his eyes fixed on me. The moment I saw him, fear coursed through me, sharper than before. He moved closer to the diner, keeping the woman in view. Then everything went dark. My headlights flickered, and the engine sputtered before dying. Panic bubbled as I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking. The man had stopped, inches from the woman. I wanted to scream. I felt trapped as my pulse raced. Suddenly, the laughter returned, rising up from all around me. I couldn't tell if it was real or just in my head. In that moment, everything felt surreal. When the laughter faded, the man was gone. The woman remained, still staring at me. I don't know how long I sat frozen in the car. With a rush of instinct, I shoved the car door open and bolted. I ran blindly into the darkness, heart pounding hard against my ribs. What was I running from? I didn't look back until I reached the edge of the diner's property. I was out of breath, but the sense of dread pushed me to keep moving. That's when I saw a reflection in the glass of the diner. Someone was watching me. I froze, trapped in place by the shock of the reflection. It was fleeting, just a quick flash of movement, but it was enough to send a jolt of adrenaline through me. What if it was the man? The same figure who had been so close to the woman just moments before? My instinct screamed at me to run, yet my feet felt glued to the ground. I took a deep breath and forced myself to turn slowly toward the diner. The glass felt like a wall between me and whatever was inside. I squinted, trying to make out any details. The dim light of the neon sign flickered ominously. I still couldn't see clearly. All I could feel was that cold, watching presence. Get it together, I muttered under my breath. I had to know. With a shaky step forward, I approached the entrance, my heart thumping in my chest like a warning drum. The door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing an empty diner. The worn, wooden booths and the sticky floor felt like remnants of a time long past. I glanced back at the parking lot. It was devoid of any cars. Just me and whatever haunted this place. The air was stale, and a damp chill surged in. I scanned the diner, half expecting the woman to be there, but she was gone. I stepped further in, listening to the eerie silence. The laughter from earlier echoed in my mind, mixing with the unsettling quiet. I had to find out what was going on. Then I noticed an old jukebox in the corner, its screen cracked but still flickering. I approached it cautiously. The last song it played felt oddly familiar, like one I had heard playing during my first encounter. Did it mean anything? The realization sent a shiver down my spine. Before I could probe further, I heard a noise, the faint sound of footsteps from behind the counter. My breath hitched, and the hairs on my arms stood up. I wasn't alone. I had thought this diner was empty, but now that certainty felt shaky. Is anyone here? I called out, my voice trembling. Silence followed for a heartbeat, then another shuffling sound. I instinctively took a step back. Maybe I should have just left. Suddenly, the laughter returned, but this time it felt different, closer, echoing right inside the diner like a mocking chorus. That's when I saw her again. The woman from the roadside was standing at the far end of the counter, her gaze still distant but now fixed on me. My heart sank. She seemed to be looking through me rather than at me. "Why don't you come closer?" she said slowly, her voice unnaturally calm. I felt tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. Panic surged through me as I turned to run, but before I could, the man appeared, blocking the exit. His features were obscured, but the shadows deepened around him. "Stay," he said, his voice low and steady. The command spun my fear into a frantic desperation. I bolted, but not before I caught a glimpse of something moving in the darkness beyond them, another figure, smaller and darting among the shadows. My blood turned to ice. Who was it? Did I actually want to find out? I dashed for the front door, and just as I reached it, the laughter erupted again, followed by an even more chilling scream. I tore through the door into the night, my breath ragged, but the fear gripped me tighter than ever. The highway loomed like a dark monster, and I was directly in its path. I sprinted down the highway, the asphalt stretching like a nightmare, and my heart pounded in my ears. The diner grew distant behind me, but the image of that woman and the man remained etched in my mind. I had to get away. The moon hung high, casting an eerie glow on the road, and the trees on either side loomed like silent spectators. Every shadow felt alive, every rustle sent adrenaline coursing through my veins. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see them materialize from the darkness, but there was nothing, yet my instincts told me that I wasn't safe. Out of breath, I pushed myself to keep running. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon an old gas station, its lights flickering like dying stars against the bleakness of the night. With a faint hope of finding help, I dashed toward it, praying it wasn't a trap. The door creaked ominously as I pushed it open, revealing a dusty interior filled with cluttered shelves and old magazines. A faded 90s poster of a cartoon character smiled at me while the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I stepped inside, my pulse racing, and scanned the room for any sign of life. "Hello?" I called out, but my voice sounded weak. Silence enveloped me, wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. Then, I heard a sound, a soft giggle, high-pitched and childlike, breaking the suffocating quiet. I turned slowly, my breath hitching. The sound seemed to come from the back room. Against every instinct screaming at me to flee, I moved toward the sound. I reached the doorway to the back room and paused. The giggling stopped, replaced by a hushed whispering. The hairs on my neck stood on end. I took a hesitant step inside, the floor creaking beneath me. In the dim light, I could make out shadows darting. My heart raced as I listened intently. The voices were indistinct, but one stood out, a voice unnervingly familiar. "She doesn't know," it said, followed by another laugh. It couldn't be. The small figure of the woman flickered in my mind, her distant gaze haunting me. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were talking about me. I shuffled back, ready to leave, when I bumped into something solid. I gasped and spun around to face a figure standing just behind me, an elderly man, his face lined with deep shadows. His eyes seemed to pierce right through me. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice raspy. "Just looking for help," I stammered. I need to get away from." My voice trailed off as the thought of the woman and the man flooded my mind again. He nodded slowly, as if he understood. "They come for those who linger too long. You must not stay." Before I could ask who he meant, he pointed toward the door. "Go. Now." I didn't hesitate. I bolted from the gas station and back into the night. But before I could catch my breath, I noticed a figure at the edge of the light, a girl, small and cloaked in shadows. Panic surged again. The childlike laughter echoed in my mind as I stumbled backward. "Who are you?" I shouted. The girl stayed silent, merely watching me, her presence heavy with unseen terror. That's when I heard it. A low growl, vibrating beneath the surface of night, and in that dreadful moment, I knew I wasn't just running from the woman or the man. Something else was out there, watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. And I had no idea what it wanted. My heart raced as I faced the girl. The shadows around her twisted and danced, making it hard to see her face clearly. "What do you want?" I called, my voice wavering. I took a hesitant step back, trying to create distance, but she did not move. Then, the growl echoed again, louder this time, vibrating through the ground like a warning bell. My instincts kicked in. I couldn't stand here, not with something prowling in the dark. I turned and sprinted down the highway, desperate to escape whatever was closing in. The empty road stretched ahead, but I could feel the oppressive atmosphere tightening around me. The girl's presence lingered in my mind, but I couldn't afford to think about her now. I needed to focus. In the distance, I spotted the faint glow of lights ahead, a sign of civilization, or so I hoped. I pushed myself harder, ignoring the fatigue gnawing at my muscles. Maybe I could find a car or someone to help. As I neared the lights, I realized it was another building, a rundown motel, its neon sign flickering like a heartbeat. My heart sank. I hesitated, weighing the options. A sprinting figure to my left caught my attention. I turned to see a man, disheveled and wild-eyed, running toward me. Fear gripped my throat. He looked just as frantic as I felt. "Help! Please!" he shouted. But before I could respond, a series of deep growls erupted from the woods lining the highway. The man skidded to a halt, his eyes wide with terror. "It's coming! We have to go!" My instincts screamed at me to trust him. Without a word, I ran alongside him, both of us barreling toward the motel. We burst through the door just as a thunderous crash shook the earth behind us. The metallic scent of fear filled the air as we slammed the door shut. "Do you have a car?" I gasped, trying to catch my breath. "No, he started, but his voice trailed off as we briefly heard the snarls growing louder outside. He looked at me, panic evident. "We're trapped here." I glanced around the small reception area. The day-old coffee sat in a pot on the counter, but it was too cold and stale to provide comfort. My eyes darted toward the only doorway leading further into the motel. There must be somewhere we could hide. "Follow me," I whispered, edging toward the back hall. The man nodded, and we crept forward, fear hanging heavy in the air. With every step, the growls escalated, reverberating off the walls. When we reached a door marked "Staff Only," I hesitated. The noise outside grew deafening. I pushed the door open, and we slipped inside, closing it behind us with a soft click. Inside, the small space was cluttered with old furniture, a desk piled high with papers, and a single dim light overhead. But then, something caught my eye on the desk, a tattered notebook, half open. The pages revealed sketch after sketch of familiar figures, the woman, the man, and even the girl. They were drawn in detail, as if the artist had studied them closely. My breath caught in my throat. Who had created this? Were they victims, like us? Before I could unravel that thought, the pounding on the door began, and my heart sank deeper. The growls morphed into a cacophony of voices, echoing through the motel. They were calling out names, whispering threats, and promising things I couldn't understand. "What is happening?" I whispered, turning toward the man, who looked equally horrified. That's when I realized the sketches showed not only the figures I feared but also their prey. And with that revelation, I understood, we weren't just stuck in here, we were part of something much larger, and whatever was out there was coming for us next. The pounding on the door intensified, and my heart raced. I turned to the man, who was peering through a crack in the door. His face was ghostly pale, illuminated only by the weak light overhead. "We can't stay here," he whispered, fear palpable in his voice. It pushed me into action. "What's your name?" I asked quickly, trying to gauge how we would tackle this together. "Jake," he said, still watching the door. "And you?" "Ava." I took a deep breath to steady myself. "We need a plan. We can't just wait for whatever's out there to find us." As I spoke, I swept my eyes across the cluttered room. Maybe there was something we could use. The sketches on the desk disturbed me, but they could also hold clues. I reached for the notebook, flipping through pages of haunting images. The last few were different symbols, strange markings that looked like they belonged to some ancient text. I shuddered at the thought of their meaning. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, jolting me. I grabbed Jake's arm. "We need to find another exit." I scanned the room, searching for a window or another door. My heart sank when I noticed the only light source flickering. Over there. Jake pointed toward a corner where another door stood ajar. Let's check that one. We crept toward it as the pounding resumed, now accompanied by low, distorted voices. I felt sick to my stomach. But we didn't have a choice. I gently pushed the door open. It squeaked ominously, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. What if it leads us to a dead end? I whispered, glancing at Jake. Uncertainty flickered across his face, but he nodded resolutely. Better than waiting up here. He moved first, and I followed closely, each step echoing ominously in the stairwell. The air felt clammy and thick. At the bottom, we stepped into a dim basement filled with old furniture and boxes. Dampness hung in the air, and the faint smell of mold assaulted my senses. There were no windows, only one exit, which left me feeling vulnerable. Where do we go now? Jake asked, looking around nervously. I took a breath. We should look for something we can defend ourselves with. Maybe there's a tool or something. We rummaged through the boxes, my hands shaking as I searched. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. I spun around, ready to scream, but it was only the shadows shifting as the light flickered overhead. Did you see that? I said, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. What? He whispered sharply, his eyes wide. Nothing. Just shadows. But my gut told me it was more than that. As we continued to search, I heard it again, the faint whispers growing nearer. I looked at Jake, and the fear in his eyes mirrored my own. Suddenly, the walls pulsed, vibrant and alive, as if they wanted to swallow us whole. Desperation seeped in. We need to go back up. I insisted, but just as I turned, a figure darted out from behind a stack of boxes. Wait. It was a girl around our age, wild-haired and dirty. They're coming. You have to run. Just then, the door we had come through slammed shut, a loud bang that echoed through the basement. The growls now sounded angry, frustrated. Who are you? Jake demanded, his voice a mix of confusion and alarm. I don't have time to explain. She shouted, panic evident in her tone. They're here. You need to follow me. I didn't hesitate. Lead the way. I cried, feeling the surge of adrenaline. As we dashed away from the closed door, I realized this encounter had just taken a dangerous turn. The whispers grew louder, and terror seeped into my thoughts. Whatever was out there, it was closing in, and we were running out of time. We sprinted after the girl, our footsteps echoing against the concrete floor. My heart raced as I struggled to keep up. I glanced back at the sealed door, dread washing over me. The heavy growls were now mixed with a sinister scratching sound that made my skin crawl. Where are we going? I panted, trying to catch my breath. Just around the corner. She shouted over her shoulder, her wild hair bouncing as she ran. We can hide in there. She led us to a small alcove, barely visible in the shadows. I squeezed in behind a stack of dusty crates, while Jake followed suit, pressing close. The girl took a deep breath, her eyes wide and frantic. What's your name? I whispered, trying to get a better read on her. Emmy, she replied quickly, glancing around as if the walls themselves were about to betray us. Do you know what's happening? Jake asked, urgency lacing his voice. Emmy nodded, but her expression faltered. I heard them, too. It's some kind of hunt. Hunt? I repeated, my stomach twisting. What do you mean? The whispers, they're not just noises. They come from them. She pointed to the source of the growling, now reverberating through the basement. They search for people. For whatever they want. I shivered at her words. How do you know? I've seen it, she said, her voice quaking. I ran away last time, but I couldn't escape completely. I felt the fear grip me tighter. They weren't just chasing us, whatever they were after something else. Something worse. Then the growling shifted, turning to frantic scratching at the door. My heart dropped as a heavy thud echoed, shaking the dust from the ceiling. What do we do? I hissed, panic rising. Emmy's eyes darted around, searching for a way out. We can't stay here. There's a tunnel leading out of this basement, but we have to be quiet. A tunnel? Jake echoed, hope flickering in his eyes. Where? Follow me. Emmy urged, edging toward a wall where shadows gathered. She pushed against the boards, revealing a hidden entrance covered in grime. Get in. One by one, we slipped through the narrow opening. The air was stale and damp, and the tunnel curved into darkness. I could barely see, but I felt Emmy's urgency as she led us deeper underground. Do you hear that? Jake whispered, glancing back toward the entrance. I strained to listen. The whispers were still there, but now they morphed into harsh snarls, echoing in the passageway. I froze. They're coming. Keep moving. Emmy shouted, her voice fierce. As we hurried through the twisting tunnel, we stumbled upon a chamber filled with flickering lights. I hesitated, a sense of dread creeping in. What is this place? Emmy stepped forward, her eyes wide in fascination. I think they use this to lure people in. Look at these lights. I followed her gaze, noticing the glow emanating from odd symbols etched into the stone walls. They were the same markings I saw in the sketchbook. We should go. I urged, unease clawing at me once more. But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye, a subtle shimmer against the wall where the shadows dwelled. Wait. What's that? That's when I saw it. A figure emerging from the shadows. I couldn't see its face, but the sinister outline moved closer, a grotesque smile spreading as it revealed sharp teeth. Run! I screamed, pushing Emmy ahead of me as the whispers erupted into chaos. The darkness seemed to close in around us, leaving no escape. We plunged deeper into the tunnel, my breath hitching as the echoes of the growls intensified behind us. I could hear the sharp scraping sound growing louder, like nails on a chalkboard, and it sent a shiver down my spine. Emmy was ahead, pulling us forward, her courage shining against our mounting dread. Is this tunnel even safe? Jake gasped, his eyes glancing back nervously. We have to trust her, I said, trying to sound more certain than I felt. She's been here before. But as I said those words, I couldn't shake the image of the figure emerging from the shadows. Its maw full of teeth loomed in my mind. I could almost hear its laughter, if that's what it could be called. Emmy spoke again, breaking the silence. We're almost there. Just a little further. The tunnel opened into another chamber, this one larger and dimly lit. The walls glimmered with more of those symbols, pulsating softly as if they were alive. I didn't understand their purpose, but a sense of wrongness flooded my gut. Where do we go now? I asked, looking around, searching for another exit. Emmy pointed to a jagged opening across the chamber. That way. But be quiet. They'll hear us. Just then, a new sound echoed through the room, a low, rhythmic thumping. My heart raced as shadows slithered against the walls, inching closer. What is that? I whispered, panic creeping into my voice. They track you by sound, Emmy said urgently. If we can reach the other side, maybe we can escape. Without thinking, I moved instinctively towards the opening she indicated. The three of us moved as silently as we could, but adrenaline made each step feel like pounding drums. My mind was racing, worrying about the kind of monsters that were out there in the dark. We reached the jagged opening, but my hand froze on the stone as I saw something glinting near the ground, a sharpened, rusty blade, caked in dried stains. Is that blood? I gasped, pulling back as waves of nausea washed over me. Emmy followed my gaze, her eyes widening. "We have to go. Now." Just as we were about to scramble through the opening, the thumping grew louder, shaking the very walls. Suddenly, the darkness pulled back for a brief moment, revealing several creatures closing in. Their forms were twisted and elongated, their eyes luminous with a hunger I had never seen before. I felt paralyzed, rooted to the spot as if my feet had turned to stone. "Now!" Emmy screamed again, the urgency jolting me into motion. We pushed into the jagged opening, squeezing through as the sounds of claws ripping against stone filled the air. I felt despair creeping in, clawing at my heart. "Go, go, go!" Jake urged from behind me. I shoved myself forward, adrenaline fueling my movements. The tunnel narrowed further, and I could hear the growls escalating into a haunting chorus of fury. I was terrified of what was hunting us, and terrified that we might not escape. As we reached the end of the tunnel, a sudden blinding light surged around us. It felt like the bright sun piercing through darkness. But before I could figure out where to go next, everything went silent. The howls faded into a heavy stillness, and I stumbled forward, disoriented. It was too quiet. Then, an unexpected voice broke the silence. "You shouldn't have come here." I turned to see a figure standing at the tunnel's exit, engulfed in light. I couldn't tell if they meant us harm or if we had just stepped into something even more dangerous. "Who are you?" I stammered, confusion swirling in my chest. The figure's expression was unreadable, the outline shifting as shadows nipped at the edges of the light. "You've awoken them," they stated, and my stomach dropped at the implication. But before I could ask more, they pointed to the path ahead. "Run! Run!" I needed no further prompting. With Emmy and Jake beside me, I bolted through the light, now captured by a new dark uncertainty. We stumbled forward into a new space, the light quickly dissolving behind us as the tunnel swallowed us whole once more. The air shifted, cooler and damp, with the faint, sickening scent of something rotting. I could feel my heart racing in my chest, and I glanced at Emmy and Jake. Their faces mirrored my own fear. What just happened?" Jake managed to whisper, his voice trembling. "I don't know," I admitted. "But whatever we woke up, it's not good." We approached the end of the tunnel cautiously, adrenaline still rushing through me. The dim light barely illuminated the ground, making it hard to see what was ahead. Emmy took the lead again, carefully pushing through the last stretches until we found ourselves outside. We emerged into a vast open area, an underground cavern sprawling out before us. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, and the ground was littered with debris. A few glowing crystals dotted the space, casting eerie shadows that danced like specters. But there was something in the air, a thick tension, a sense of being watched. "Where are we?" I asked, scanning the area. "This is the wailing chamber," Emmy said, her voice steady but strained. "Listen closely. You can hear their whispers." I strained my ears, and the sound hit me like ice water. Faint, overlapping voices floated through the air, a mixture of cries and warnings. It was unsettling. My skin crawled with anxiety. "Can you understand what they're saying?" Jake asked, his voice barely a whisper. "No, it's all jumbled," Emmy replied, her brow furrowed in concentration. "But we need to keep moving. The longer we stay here, the worse it'll get." Just as we started to walk deeper into the cavern, an unsettling chill swept through the air, causing me to shiver. Then, a loud crash echoed from the far side, followed by a twisted figure staggering into view. Pale skin stretched tightly over protruding bones, with wide, hollow eyes that glowed with an unnatural light. "What is that?" I gasped, pulling back instinctively. Emmy grabbed my arm. "It's one of them. We have to go." But instead of turning back, the creature locked its gaze on me. "You're not supposed to be here," it rasped, its voice a low hiss. Why have you broken the seal? For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words felt heavy, each syllable dripping with malice and an eerily compelling curiosity. We didn't mean to. I stammered, stepping back as the creature advanced. No choice, it continued, a sinister smile revealing jagged teeth. You have awakened things better left in the dark. In an instant, I felt dread coiling in my stomach. We shouldn't be here, we had stumbled into a world that didn't want us. Just then, a series of growls broke from behind me, chilling me to the core. The creatures we had fled were here, and they were hungry. Run! Go! Emmy shouted, her voice breaking through my fear like a lifeline. We didn't need any more encouragement. I turned, sprinting with every ounce of energy I had. The cavern walls shifted, flickering shadows behind us. The sound of claws clattered against stone, chasing us deeper into the heart of the unknown. I could feel my legs burning, but I pushed myself harder. We could not let them catch us. Just as I thought we might burst through to safety, a blast of wind knocked me off balance. A new figure emerged from the shadows, tall and shrouded, its features obscured and menacing. And then everything went dark. I don't remember exactly how long I was lost in that darkness. When I finally became aware of my surroundings again, I was lying on the cold, hard ground of a dimly lit room, gasping for air as confusion flooded my mind. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage like a relentless drum. I blinked several times, waiting for my eyes to adjust, hoping to see Emmy and Jake nearby. But I was alone. As I struggled to sit up, I felt an overwhelming wave of anxiety. The air felt thick, weighted down as if it was charged with expectation. I glanced around, squinting against the shadows. The room was barren and sterile, with stone walls bearing the scars of time, cracks spider-webbing across the surface like my frayed nerves. Hello? I called out, my voice echoing back to me, but no response came. A lump rose in my throat. I tried to remember what happened before the darkness consumed me. We were running. The creature was behind us. I pushed against the floor, rising on shaky legs. I knew I had to find Emmy and Jake. I staggered forward toward a narrow doorway that cut into the wall. With each cautious step, a whisper brushed against my ears. The echoes of laughter, childlike and mocking, mixed with something deeper, something laden with sorrow. It was haunting, almost intoxicating. They were still here. I was sure of it. I reached the doorway and hesitated, my hand hovering over the handle. What lay beyond? With a deep breath, I turned the knob and stepped out into what appeared to be a long hallway. Dim lights flickered overhead, illuminating a scattered path strewn with unfamiliar remnants, a child's toy here, a moldy cushion there. The atmosphere felt charged, and I could sense the walls constricting around me as I moved. Panic drummed in my ears as I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see slender fingers clawing towards me from the shadows. They were still hunting. I pressed on, following the whispers that seemed to guide me deeper into the eerie labyrinth. The reflections danced in my periphery, shadows weaving in and out of my sight, but as I scanned the corridor, they would vanish before I could confront them. I felt hollow, disconnected, as if I were trespassing in a world where I didn't belong. Emmy! Jake! I shouted, my voice trembling and desperate. Still, only silence responded, an aching silence that sent chills down my spine. I rounded a corner and stumbled into a vast, open chamber. It was unlike anything I had seen. Crumbling pillars towered above, and strings of energy swirled around, weaving between the shadows. The laughter intensified like a haunting symphony, and I felt the very essence of the place seep into me, tugging at the edges of my consciousness. Suddenly, there they were. Emmy and Jake stood at the far side of the chamber, their expressions contorted with fear. Relief surged through me, but it was cut short when I looked beyond them. Shadows emerged, twisting and writhing, coalescing into familiar figures, the woman, the man, and something smaller darting between them, flitting in the darkness like a flickering moth. Run! I screamed, but it was too late. They were on us in a heartbeat, the air growing heavy with their presence. The woman's vacant eyes locked onto mine, her expression unchanging. The man stepped forward, blocking our path, a grin spreading across his shadowed features. The laughter crescendoed into a chorus of fractured echoes. I could barely breathe as the figures approached, the sense of dread coiling tighter around my chest. Just as the sharp claws reached for me, everything went white. I blinked, disoriented once more, standing back in the middle of the familiar highway. The trees loomed above, the streetlights flickered in the distance, and the asphalt stretched endlessly before me. I felt a surreal sense of déjà vu, like I was caught in a loop, reliving the very start of my journey. Had I escaped? I quickly looked around, scanning for Emmy and Jake, but there was no sign of them. My heart sank. Had I lost them for good? And yet, the laughter remained. Lingering in the air. Like smoke, it brushed past my ears, echoing out into the void. I knew it was not over. I had escaped the darkness, but whatever I had encountered on that highway still haunted the edges of my existence. I moved away, my feet carrying me down the road, uncertainty clawing at my thoughts. Questions buzzed in my mind like restless spirits, unanswered. What had been real? What consequences lingered in the shadows? I didn't know if I would ever return to this place or if I would find closure, but I knew one thing: I could still hear the whispers. They beckoned me to remember. And I might never forget.